All right, Mr. Vasquez, thank you for coming in with us today. I think Councilman Willett just stepped out temporarily. We have Councilwoman French and Councilman Rogers who are online for us. As I think we noted, and we apologize for the slightly late start, but we're more on schedule than I was thought. You'll have 10 minutes or up to 10 minutes to begin, and then we'll go around with questions from City Council. So, Mr. Vasquez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Good morning to everybody on TV and everybody behind me that has taken the time to come to the interview today. It is an honor for me to be here presenting myself and my credentials for your consideration for the role of City Manager of this great city. I have served the city for over 28 years, having started in 1997 as an entry-level planner in the City Planning and Development Department, the department that I now lead. My tenure of service has given me a deep appreciation of this community, its diversity, its challenges, and its potential. Over the years, I've earned a reputation of being a trusted leader, a dedicated leader, a problem solver, somebody that's looked upon, through difficult challenges. I've been trusted with countless assignments, projects, resources, and I believe my work has made a difference in this city. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. Most people don't know me. I was born in Bolivia. It's a small landlocked country in South America. I came to the United States in the 1980s. It was a time of economic distress and turmoil in Bolivia. I came seeking opportunity and stability. I landed in Wisconsin. I went to high school in Wisconsin. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire to get my degree in economics. I pursued my career, my studies further at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. I could have gone to Ohio State, but no Wisconsinite goes to Ohio State. So I went to finish my degree in urban and regional planning, and very shortly after, I came to Kansas City as an entry-level planner. I've made Kansas City my life and my family. The very first time I had a chance to go to the manager's office, back in those days, business session used to be in the city manager's office, and I had to make a presentation to the body and to the city manager. So I walked in there and I went to prepare, and I was in awe of the place. I thought, how do you get here? And the three things, right? You have to be smart, you have to know what you're doing, you have to know the right people. And who's not from here, you don't think that's in your future. And I am humbled to be here right now because I've done the right things. I might be smart, that's to be decided. But I met the right people. My approach in the work that I do is collaborative. I bring a great sense of integrity and honesty in the work that I do. I've gotten to know this city very well. I've worked north, south, east, west. I've gotten to know a lot of people. I've dealt with different challenges. I recognize that we have different challenges. It would be a great honor for me to continue to be serving in this role, serving the city of Kansas City as city manager. I'm committed to building trust, partnership with all of you, which I think is important in the role of city manager. Together, I think we can do much more for our city if we are working in partnership. So I will conclude my remarks now, and I'll be open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vasquez. I got some different ideas from Councilman O'Neill on who should start and finish, but we won't actually do that. We'll just go 5th District and kind of the opposite of our usual order. We'll go in order like that. So we'll start with Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. So pay equity remains a significant issue within the city's workforce, impacting morale, retention, and fairness. How would you assess and address pay disparities across departments, and what specific steps would you take to create a more transparent and equitable compensation structure?
I think evaluating the role of each individual staff member and function in the city is something that needs to happen constantly. I think from time to time, our HR department kind of lets those things slide, and then skills get out of alignment, pay scales get out of alignment. We're not conducting frequent analysis of market study and compensation studies for the various roles that we play. So this is one of the, I mean, and everything that I do, you'll hear me say this often, these are things that need to be done periodically. It's like going to the doctor. You know, things are always changing. So it is going to be imperative to work with HR to make sure that we are evaluating the various job classifications, position descriptions that we have out there, make sure they're appropriate for the functions that the folks are performing, and make sure they're being adequately compensated, and providing people an opportunity also to identify what skills and additional skills and new skills they're bringing to the roles that need to be considered in evaluating compensation.
Okay, thank you. Kansas City, our budget, we're facing a fiscal cliff. What new revenue resources, public-private partnerships, or efficiencies would you explore to close the budget cap long-term?
I think the first thing actually that we need to think about is the fact that, April of 2026, we need to renew the earnings tax. So it's going to be a campaign, I think, from all of you with partnership and the business community to make sure that happens. Without that resource, we lose about 50% of our discretionary spending. So that's number one, getting alignment with, and making people understand that that resource is of incredible value to us and for the things and services that we provide. Another resource that is, looking at a deadline, if you will, is our Central City Economic Development Tax. To me, and I don't know why we don't tout this more, but it is the most incredible resource that we have to promote investment in the parts of the city that are disinvested. We need to tout its success, and we need to ensure that that resource also gets renewed. So those two are within your time horizon here as mayor and city council. And also the city manager is going to be responsible to make sure to demonstrate that those resources are being responsibly utilized, and so that those are renewed and we can continue to rely upon them. Beyond that, I think investment in the city needs to continue, but it needs to be a partnership, and it needs to be a partnership that is equal. We need to demand and expect more of development of the development community, the business community, make sure that we demonstrate the value that we provide to their endeavors here in the city. They appreciate that value, and they are, they feel committed to be a partner with us. As I said before, partnership is important, and those are partnerships we need to forge.
So recently, we know Kansas City has challenges with public trust. And so I'm glad that you said you would want to build trust in partnership with the council. But how would you work to reform a city department that has lost public trust and we know specifically the challenges that we have right now. How would you work to reform and rebuild public trust for the city?
Well, I think we need to set up expectations. The number one role of communications is to provide truthful and accurate information about what's going on with the city, whatever that might be. I know there are times where the news that we have to deliver may not be the news that we want to deliver, but that is what it is. And we cannot hide from it. We cannot, the cover-up is worse than the lie. And so you cannot hide from those things. You need to present them for what they are, but also maybe explain how we got there. What conditions, what factors led us to the position in which we're in. Acknowledge that we had made a mistake, and then commit to addressing the problem. All of that is to say that we need to be transparent and honest and trustworthy. Trust is a big element of being in a leadership role. Without trust, you have difficulty moving forward.
Thank you.
Pro Tem, Councilman Curls.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, thank you for being here, Director Vasquez. I appreciate your service to the city and all that you've done and your willingness to step into this role. If selected city manager, what would be your top 3 priorities for the city?
Starting with, well, I'll tell you what I think I'd want to do in the next 90 days if I were to be selected. Understanding that potentially this is a 2.5-year appointment, not a big window to make significant changes. So in the first 90 days, I need to go out to every segment of the community I have not had a chance to meet. Like I said before, I've met a lot of people. I've not met everybody. So I need to make sure that people understand that I am here, I am somebody they can talk to, and somebody that's willing to listen, to build trust. So I think that is number one priority, to build trust. I think the second thing I need to do is I need to assess the strength of our team. I need to make sure, how do we assemble a structure, reporting structure in the manager's office and in the department heads that can give you and the department heads in the community and city council in the community an avenue, to identify your issues and priorities. I think I have seen this done in many different ways. I've worked under 5 city managers, and everybody's done it differently. To me, the successful city managers is the one that forges a partnership with everybody individually. We recognize that each one of you represents now about 85,000 people. You have constituents that you're responsible to. And so I want to be responsive to your constituents. So having a department, management structure that understands that being responsive to constituents is important is one of the things I want to drive. I don't want to have a flat organization. With the previous city manager had, all 21 department heads reporting directly to him, plus assistant city managers. That's unmanageable. That goes against any kind of span of control literature that you read about how to manage organizations. So I will devise a structure where, I have a smaller team, a core team of people, and that is how I will begin to manage the organization. And the third thing, immediate thing, is going to be, well, what are the things that are in front of us that we need to address immediately? The World Cup is one of them. Our preparedness, what responsibilities we have with respect to the World Cup. I think I feel somewhat unprepared. I think we have a liability with respect to that event if we don't perform as required. And in preparation for that, we have 2 looming vacancies that are critical, to fulfill our responsibility. One of those is our Office of Emergency Management. You know, the director or just retired. We need to be prepared to bring somebody on board and get them up to speed quick. And we have we have about a year to get somebody up and running. The other vacancy is our, fire department. Our chief will also retire. Another huge vacuum in leadership and a key function within the organization. So taking care of the things that are immediate are probably the things that we need to focus on. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. And my other question is what, there are areas in the city that feel neglected when it comes to economic development, and actually there's proof that they have been neglected, primarily the 3rd and the 5th district. What would be your plan, or would you focus more attention on economic development in the 3rd and the 5th districts? And how would you make those residents in those districts and those areas feel that they are more inclusive of the city when it comes to having their voices heard?
I think when it comes to economic development, at times we have been, we're like, we gravitate to the glitzy and the big projects, and we think of those as, progress and development. In the 3rd and 5th district, it's hard to accomplish those kinds of projects because there's just not sufficient mass, to make those happen. Now, having said that, we have opportunities within the 3rd and 5th districts to rebuild and reinvest in those communities. We have made a significant investment in Linwood and Prospect, and even though it is a challenging investment, we need to continue to figure out how do we prop up the surrounding neighborhoods. How do we provide housing improvements, home renovation improvements to support the residents that live in that area so they don't feel like we are only paying attention to the big things, but we're also addressing the things that are meaningful to them. Their basics, home improvement, sidewalks, lights, trash pickup, street resurfacing. Those are the basics, I think, that begin to create stability in those neighborhoods. And I think those are the things that we need to focus on. We have other opportunities. We have the redevelopment at 5900 Swope Parkway. Again, a project that's going to bring an opportunity for senior living in that area. But the surrounding neighborhood also needs to see the spillover effect and impact of bringing that kind of investment in that community. So we need to come up with something that will support those surrounding neighborhoods. And frankly speaking, we have an opportunity also with the fact that historically, the citizens of Kansas City approved a bond vote to renovate our schools within the Kansas City Public School District. Every school around, every home, every neighborhood around those school districts needs to be targeted for home renovation, for home improvements. We need to stabilize. People need to know that as we invest in our city, we're investing in all of our city. And that means existing residents, not just new residents. And so I think that is something that can be done to support development in the 3rd and 5th district.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Curls, Councilman Bunch.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Vasquez. It's been an honor to get to know you over the last 10, 12 years or so, and I want to thank you for your continued service and dedication to the city as a long-standing employee, and thanks for being here today in this very public environment for a job interview. I'm going to just be fairly blunt and say that one of the biggest challenges that I believe we have right now is not just trust from the community, but trust from our employees and morale in our staff. I find that it's very, very important to be a workplace where people want to come every day, because these are civil servants. These are folks who've dedicated their lives and their careers, at least a part of their career, to making a city better. How do you plan to work to rebuild the employee morale and improve upon that to make sure that this is a wonderful place to work?
Don't think of this as a pitch, but I think if you demonstrate to staff that the city of Kansas City is a place that cultivates talent, that promotes talent, if they can see that, they will see that this place is a place for opportunity, where you can come in and build your career, make your life, and grow, raise your family. That's one of the things that's important to me. That's one of the things that's been important to me in being an employee of Kansas City, and I tell this people all the time. This city has given me the opportunity to make my life, raise my kids, and I think everybody should have that opportunity. I think this place provides that opportunity. So recognizing talent, cultivating talent, providing people opportunities to advance and grow are hugely important. And I'll tell you a story. I love to tell stories, so I'll tell you this story. As a project manager in Public Works, 10, 12 years ago, I was frustrated with the fact that the department always wanted to hire engineers to be project managers. And I'm thinking, well, guys, we're offering 70 cents on the dollar, 60 cents on the dollar for the talent that we want, and we don't get what we want. We constantly had vacancies and recruitment after recruitment after recruitment after recruitment. So I sat down, maybe starting in 2013, and I wrote out an entire employee classification system for project management. Promotions, minimum skills, opportunities for people to begin without, with nothing more than a high school education, and have the opportunity to promote through the organization and become a project manager. Wrote it out.
Made in America.
It took me
means something to
years.
Private equity investors.
Sorry, pardon me.
It took me years to get that incorporated into our classification system. It wasn't until 19-something. Until 2021, 7 years of arguing. At that point, it didn't matter to me. The position description I wrote wasn't gonna do me any good. I was already a project manager, a senior project manager at that. Wasn't doing me any good. But I did get department heads to get behind it. And we actually do now have the senior project manager classification and the whole project management career series within the compensation system. And I tell you why this is important, because I'm gonna name a person by name. Her name is Daisy Dixon. She was a construction inspector for years, doing the same work in and out, in and out. And when I became assistant city manager, I came up to the office, and one day I decided to go back to my old, stomping grounds down at the engineering center over in Coal Mine Road. And there's Daisy, and she's sitting in my old office. She said to me, "You're an inspiration." So there's opportunity in the city.
Thank you.
Councilman Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Vasquez, good morning. Thank you for joining. I'm going to pull for the same list of questions that I sent to the other two candidates. Beginning with my first question, as you mentioned, this position is expected to run to the end of the current mayor council term, ends on August 1st, 2027. That means the next 2 years will be very pivotal for Kansas City's future. You recognize several large projects and things on the horizon, both events and on the development and infrastructure side that are in various stages of progress. Simply put, we do not have time to lose, and it will be incumbent upon the next city manager to immediately instill stability. It is my opinion that enacting large-scale changes across the organization, such as replacing multiple department directors, will be counterproductive to stability. Although I think we would all agree there are many things that need to be fixed, I do not believe that we need large-scale changes at the leadership level. We need stability. What is your brief response to that statement?
I agree. I don't think we have a lot of time to make significant change. The city manager has to come into this position with the mindset of a coach. You know, you need to guide, you need to encourage, motivate, provide corrective action. Don't have a whole lot of time to change, don't have a whole lot of opportunity for change. So we need to, right out of the gate, understand what are the points of pain for the department and coach that. You know, I'm going to say Andy Reid, but no, it's Vince Lombardi all day long. So it is definitely something that you need, a skill that you need to bring to the table to be a coach and a motivator.
And will you commit to stability within the organization as a top priority?
Absolutely, yes.
Every year, thousands of residents express the importance of the basics, whether it's basic city services or infrastructure, and they do so through the resident satisfaction survey. However, I believe we have underutilized this survey. How will you improve the delivery of the basics, both basic city services and infrastructure, and what tools will you use to improve citizen satisfaction? And I'll add a caveat to that question. About a third of the 4th District is in the Northland, and we have neighborhoods that have aging infrastructure or no infrastructure. Looking at the different needs across our city, how would you utilize those tools to ensure that there's some equity?
Well, obviously, the customer satisfaction surveys, the citizen satisfaction survey is a critical tool for us to understand what priorities are. One of the concerns I've had with the surveys is that they don't seem to be aligned with our citywide business plan and our priority-based budgeting. Those are things that we put in place. And so I met with Data KC folks earlier this week. They are working to align those customer satisfaction surveys with priority-based budgeting and with the citywide business plan. So I hope that the information that you receive from the surveys is going to help you better make decisions about how to guide the budget going forward. I think, and this is one of the things that to keep in mind too, you know, the last 4 years, maybe with the exception of the COVID years, have been record revenues. We've seen a lot of record revenue in the last 4 years. We have not really had to worry too much about shortages or making really tough decisions. We've been able to fill just about every need that we have. We have arguments about what's important or not, but the argument is whether or not, the argument becomes this versus that. We have the resource, but those times are changing. I think in the next couple of years, we're probably going to see a little bit of an economic downturn. I was listening to the news reports on Monday related to economic performance. GDP for the country is down. For the first quarter, one more quarter of negative GDP growth means that we're in a recession. And as a community, we're like the Titanic. We have momentum. We will continue going forward once we hit the iceberg. But we will eventually begin to experience the need to make tough decisions. And at that point, it's when citizen satisfaction survey and priority-based budgeting and all those things that we're doing today, that's when those things are going to bear fruit, and we're going to be prepared to listen to those.
Okay, thank you. My next question, I think Councilman Curls touched on it, but your answer went a little bit beyond the economic development in East Side neighborhoods. You mentioned the CCD as well. I might come back to that if we have some time at the end. The next question I have is, on April 7th, voters overwhelmingly approved a renewal of the public safety sales tax, sending a message that public safety is a top priority and that voters expect city leaders to take action. As city manager, what do you see as your role in addressing the city's ongoing public safety challenges and supporting first responders?
Well, just thinking, public safety is something that goes beyond the basics of policing. There are areas where the city manager and the council can definitely be a part of. Violence prevention, crime prevention are things that we need to focus on. We have a mental health crisis in this country, and it is something that we're not paying attention to. We need to provide resources to be able to address some of the issues that exist as a result of mental health, and which are exacerbated by the fact that there is also a drug use problem in the city. So it isn't just traditional policing, but it's also figuring out how do we support all the other things and all the other needs that the community has with respect to crime and safety.
Councilwoman Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So can you build upon some of your answers that my colleague, Councilman Curls, talked about? And I'm interested in what specific outcomes you will achieve to address the economic wealth gap between east of Prospect and west of Prospect. My constituents, similar to you, are looking for opportunity and stability. Which city tools are you committed to using to provide that opportunity and stability for all of our residents? And then you serve on the Linwood CID. What have been your accomplishments in protecting the city's investment and desire to address food insecurity? And then my final question is, how will you honor the charter and the voters' mandates that we have a manager-council form of government, not a strong mayor form of government? How will you prioritize the interests of both the 22nd and 29th floors?
With respect to resources to support development there in 5th District, obviously, like I said, CCED is a key resource that we need to make sure we deploy, and that we deploy quickly and responsibly. I think that one of the issues that we have experienced with the program is the fact that dollars have flowed slowly. We have developers that have come in with expectations of being able to receive the assistance that they need, and we have been slow to deliver. And so that is something that we need to address. We need to make sure that when the resource is offered, that the resource is provided. That's gonna come back to bite me, but okay. The second thing, with respect to the Linwood Shopping Center, I gotta tell you, and I love toast, I said that before. When this project started in 2015, I remember I was in my house reading the Business Journal. I had a paid subscription. Anyway, and I read the fact that, hey, the city's going to buy this shopping center, the city's gonna invest in this thing. And I'm like, I wonder who's doing that. I wonder whose job that is. And the very next Monday, Manager Schulte called me and says, hey, this is your thing. I'm like, okay, sounds great. What do we got? It's like, we got nothing. We don't have the property, we don't have the money, we don't have the tenants, we don't have anything. You gotta figure this out. I'm like, well, this is not what the article said. And so I figured it out. I mean, and I took to it. Like many things, it was challenging, it was difficult. But I think that to me is a beacon of what the city is willing to do to promote growth in the areas of the city that are disinvested. So that is one of the key things that I hold as an example. Now, having said that, and I go back to what I said before, it's not just the glitzy projects that we need to focus on. We also need to focus on some of the essentials, home renovations, home improvements, basic street improvements, illegal dumping. Things that send a signal to the community that we care and that we're not just all about building nice projects that then we walk away from. That is not success. Continued investment. And actually, Mayor, I'm going to credit you with this. I think when you were at the 3rd District State of the District meeting, you did say, this investment is continuous. It isn't just a one thing. And I truly believe that. And I think that is true for the entire city. So when somebody says, well, there goes more money into 18th and Vine, nobody says anything where more money goes into Westport or where more money goes into the Crossroads or the Plaza or anyplace else. It is a continuous thing. So we have to do it without apology, knowing that those are the kinds of things that we need for the community to thrive. You talked a little bit about the council manager form of government. I think the commitment here, and I said it from the outset, is partnership with each one of you. I do, at the end of the day, work for all 13 of you. It is herding cats. I mean, everybody knows that. It's not a secret. But what you get with me is straight shooter. I will tell you if you think you're crazy. You know, you'll tell me if you think I am out of line. And we will agree, and then we will move forward. And so I think that is the commitment you have from me, that I'm going to be your partner, and we're going to have heated words from time to time. We're going to have disagreement, and then we'll find common ground, and we will move forward.
Thank you, Councilwoman Robinson. Councilwoman Patterson-Haslett.
Thank you. Mario, since I've been elected, we've had the opportunity to work on a number of economic development projects, which, you know, that we're both passionate about. And, you know, so you mentioned the KCPS Home Improvement Program. I pitched, you were very eager. When I was working on getting a garage, I pitched and you were like, oh, but still was eager to help me figure it out. But my question to you is delegation. There's a lot that needs to be done in the 3rd District, and as you know, the 5th District. How will you incorporate delegating responsibilities across the staff? How will you help people grow to, you know, the level that they need to grow such that we can get more done? How do we have multiple Marios? And I think that's important in an organization and for high achievers. It's not something that you can do, you know, on your own. And so, and we've talked about this, and I don't know that we've talked through it all the way, but since you're vying for this position, I think it's good to know more of how you would build capacity amongst particularly the economic development staff, knowing that we have the deficits that we do, particularly in the urban core.
You know, I think that's an issue of trust. In my role as assistant city manager and throughout, I've gotten to meet a lot of different people with a lot of different skill sets, a lot of ability. We have a strong staff. We just need to trust them, make the assignments, set the guideposts, let them know this is what we're trying to accomplish. These are the people that you need to work with. This is the outcome. These are the deadlines. These are the things that are important to us. Get out and do it. And actually, I'm trusting you, but I want them to trust themselves that they can do this, because I was asked a question not long ago. How did you get to be the guy that always, that people look to for solutions? I just said, I raised my hand, I worked my ass off, and that is what it takes. So I would also expect people to do the same, you know, work hard. Nobody can take hard work away from you, which I love that. You know, you work, you do everything that you can, and you just live from the fruits of that. And so I will trust staff. I am building a team of people, and I'm identifying people that have skills that I never thought they had. I'm thinking, okay, you know, maybe you can do this. You know, if you can't do it, it's fine. You know, failing is not necessarily a bad thing. Failing is a good thing. That's how we learn. So I will give people the opportunity to succeed. I will give the opportunity to people to fail. More importantly, I want to give people the opportunity to learn what it takes to get the job and how to accomplish things. So yeah, I am going to rely on the staff that I have, stuff that I cultivated. One of my staff members, first day of work, said to me, throw me in the deep end. I'm like, there you go. You're in the deep end. And I can tell you that staff member has thrived, and it is probably one of the best swimmers in this city. So yeah, trust people. I'm going to cultivate, I'm going to guide, I'm going to coach. And that's what I said I would do, even with at every level of the organization.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Rogers. Good. Councilwoman French. Councilwoman French.
Yes, hi. I just wondered what kind of cat you thought I was. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, you said we were all like herding cats, so I'm just trying to make a joke, trying to lighten it a little bit. You mentioned yourself as a problem solver and someone who is collaborative and builds partnerships, and you've just mentioned a guy that people look for solutions, or the guy that people look to for solutions. Can you share some examples of successful initiatives that emerged from these collaboration efforts? And as city manager, how do you plan to foster and culture a problem solving amongst different and many times conflicting community voices and stakeholders in addressing many of these challenges our city faces?
I'm going to go back decades into what I think is the best example of problem solving. When Councilman Glover at the time was working to build up the Linwood Marketplace, as we called it, so Costco and Home Depot. Part of his initiative was to have a housing program that would support stabilize the neighborhoods around this shopping center. Nobody had any idea how to do this. So I partnered up, well, I was drafted, but did partner up with the EDC folks and Councilman Glover, so that's meritorious in itself. But I partnered up with a team, and we came up with a set of programs to figure out how to deploy resources to make sure that those neighborhoods were stabilized. We conducted, the approach is very typical on problem solving, right? What is the issue? What is the problem? What data do we have that supports and helps us identify the problem? What are the facts? What are the opinions? What are the perspectives? Who needs to be involved? Those are the kinds of things that come into place. Once we identify the problem, the next step is simple. What are the options? What can we do to address this issue? There's always multiple. What can we live with? What can't we live with? What can we do? What we cannot do? Figure out, make our decisions based on the choices that are available to us. And ultimately, just make a decision. It is, sometimes making a decision is a problem for people. People are afraid of making the wrong decision, so they make no decision. And I'll be honest, I'll tell you right now, I heard this not long ago, but the best decision you can make is the right decision, obviously. The second best decision you can make is the wrong decision, because you will learn something. And the worst decision you can make is no decision. So you have to come in there willing to be either right or wrong, and based on the information that you have with the group that you've worked with, to find a solution and execute. And if you're wrong, you'll find out. And if you're right, you'll find out. But if you make no decision, you'll never find out.
Thank you for that. How will you involve and inform the council in those problem-solving activities and collaboration and those voices, and how will that help shape your policy recommendations?
Well, every policy recommendation that is adopted by the City Council, it isn't an action of one. It is, at the end of the day, a negotiation. It is a consensus-building effort that needs the support of at least, the majority, preferably everybody. So forging those partnerships, asking you to take the lead on something. I'm like, hey, you want this? Great, here's the option, but you got to go get the support from everybody else, and I will provide the support that you need to help you with that. That is something that I think is typical, but I'm not going to go on crusades. I'm too old for that. But I will definitely work with you to make sure that we find the support to address the priorities that you think are important. And if we're to build a consensus, sometimes people see things differently. We need to be willing to understand that perspective and figure out how to address it. At the end of the day, the outcome is the desired outcome is a solution and execution of policy and programs that are going to lead to success.
Thank you. My last question is under workforce development. What role do you believe development and workforce development plays in enhancing our city's growth, and what specific initiatives are you advocating for to support that development and skill development and job opportunities for our residents? And who will you collaborate with to achieve those goals?
Thank you for that question. Actually, I realize that now that I did not address one of Councilwoman Robinson's questions with respect to, how do we provide opportunity for people elsewhere in the community. Obviously, workforce development is hugely important to our community. I actually started pitching this idea right when I became, director of planning, and realizing that, our department handles about $1.3 billion worth of construction work every year. We are the source, we are the clearinghouse for work that occurs in this city. We are the natural place for people to come looking for work and opportunity. We are the natural place to help people develop talent and skills that are needed to be successful in our economy. So I am definitely committed to finding ways. I did have a decision package, which was rejected, sore subject for me. But nonetheless, it was a decision package that was aimed at figuring out how do we get work in trades and other construction-related activities so that we can grow the talent that we need. I mean, growing talent is a common theme for me. We don't find it, we have to grow it ourselves, and we have to develop ourselves. So I'm hugely committed. I had an opportunity to work with Councilman Willett over the last few months and figure out a way how to finance and fund the Northland Career Center. I think we have an opportunity now to work with other entities and organizations to do the exact same thing, or at least to provide ways of providing funding for workforce development and skill set development. So a huge commitment on my end. Education is key. I think education is one of the things that we need to tackle and address head on. It's not entirely our purview. K through 12 is not our purview, but definitely workforce development is our purview. That is something that is essential to economic development of the city, and that is something that I think the city can be a very, very active player in.
Thank you.
Councilman Willett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Director, for being here. I believe my original question was kind of touched on within the last series of questions, so I'll tweak it up a little bit. Tell us about a time or how you interacted with stakeholders, and how do you differentiate noise that they present to you, and I'm talking about more of the complicated stakeholders within the community, and actual meat of what they're saying. How do you differentiate between noise and legit concerns and information that it can be helpful in a decision?
Well, I think the noise takes care of itself. How much traction does it get relative to what is important to everybody else that's involved in the issue at hand? At some point, and I'm going to tell you another great story. This was very bold of me years ago, but I had a meeting with a bunch of developers on an issue that needed attention. And there was this one individual that had the proclivity of taking over the space and just talking, and everybody was frustrated with this guy, and he keeps bringing this up, this got no traction. What are we going to do about this? So, big meeting, conference table, I gave everybody 2 poker chips. I said, look, everybody gets 2 of these. You say something, you throw one in. When you're out, and you can't say anything else. Deal. All right, so we started the meeting, and immediately this gentleman, boom, like, throw one in. Okay, he throws one in. We keep going. He speaks up again. Okay, throw the other one in. So we keep going, and then third counter, he wants to say something. You're out of chips. He's like, well, I'm like, well, I want to say something. Does anyone want to give this guy a chip? And they're like, nope. I'm like, we're done. We're done. So I think, and I was young. I was in my early, maybe late 20s when I did that. So it was pretty bold of me to do that. But I think, making sure that the people that are speaking are the people that people want to listen to, maybe that's the key message of that story. And understanding that maybe and letting them understand, it's like, yeah, you said everything you got. Everything that you said to us, we're using, but be smart about what you want to say. Don't just go out there and say everything that's on your mind, because it might be confusing to people, so.
I think one of the principles that you talked about is trust, important to you. Talk about a time that you demonstrated the principle of trust in a leadership decision that you've made.
I think they're countless. And maybe the fact that I'm here in front of you today is one of those situations where I've experienced, what I've seen trust. This was not something that was on my bingo card for 2025. I was thinking, 2025 was a time for me to, get a handle on the city planning and development department, continue to improve the things that needed improvement, understand the business, all those kinds of things. I got many phone calls telling me that I needed to put my name under consideration for this role. And flattering, that is, for sure. But it also signaled to me that there are people in the community that believed I'm the right person for this job. And they called me and they put their trust in me. And that's what they're telling me. That's what those phone calls mean to me. The fact that I've been effective in building relationships, I've been effective in delivering projects, I've been effective in addressing needs, and those phone calls are basically that.
Councilman O'Neill.
Thank you for being here, Mario. We've never really, every question's been asked, I know that, and I guess what I'm most curious about is, over the last 3 or 4 years, you've had an opportunity to see the city in a very holistic way of things that were going on. What, coming into this, if you're selected, would be the dramatic changes you'd make versus the subtle changes you might make?
Well, I touched upon it a little bit in our, how much time we spend on deploying resources out when resources are allocated. One of the number one issues to address, I believe, is our contracting procedures. I'm a kind of a player coach. I still work on contracts. I want to see things out fast enough. This is one of those situations where the people that are entrusted with deploying resources don't trust themselves to do it. And so they look to the law department to craft agreements and contracts. The law department is overwhelmed with everything that they do. A contract to deliver a service is not their role. So what we need to do is need to go back to the basics of how to put a contract together. Who's responsible? What are the roles and responsibilities? Who needs to know what's in the contract? I can tell you there are some people that don't know what's in those contracts. And I say this because not long ago, I was looking at a construction contract, and I don't know if you've ever seen a construction contract. They're about 400 pages long. There's all kinds of information in them. People have different responsibilities in putting it together. So I pulled up this construction contract, and I'm going through it, and I spot a section, and I'm like, wait a minute. This section, this contract that's in this contract is a section that I wrote in 2006 that was very specific to a project, and it is included in this contract as a general condition or as a general, requirement. I'm like, are you guys not looking at this stuff? This doesn't even apply to this. So there's been, maybe a lack of appreciation of the responsibility that we take when we encumber the city to perform and deliver, funding for certain activities. So contracting, for sure, is one of the first areas that I think I need to pay attention to.
Last question, and I propose this to the other candidate. The port has been active since I've been on the board, very prominently in the city, taking on a lot of the major projects throughout the city, while the EDC has slowly kind of lost projects. There is a desire by contractors to go through the port because it's easier, you don't have to deal with the city, You don't have to pay prevailing wage, you don't have to have MBE, WB. How do you view that overall in the city as a, how do you view that in the contracting world / building world, and how we go forward, and what does that represent for the city?
Well, one of the things the EDC, I mean, the rules and provisions of economic development with respect to prevailing wage and contracting and MBWB and such, those are rules that are promulgated by this body. And the EDC does its best to uphold those rules. The fact that they, Port does not. I mean, Port kind of, they lean on the fact that, hey, we're our own entity, your stuff doesn't apply to us. They do what they do to some extent, but they don't always. It would be easier to say, well, let's just, let's level the playing field. But I think it'd be more, it would be a challenge for the EDC to come up with different ways of offering competitive services. At the end of the day, they are our representative for economic development. And if they're not being successful and expect us to continue to invest in the organization without a regular success, that's a concern to me. Not long ago, I had a conversation with them and I said, so-and-so is looking to go to the Port for this project. What are you guys going to do about this? And I challenged them to come up with a competitive, proposal that would provide equal benefit than what Port can provide. And so I think they need to step up their game. I think they need to be willing to come up to the table. Maybe we do need to look at our some of the things that we have in place. I obviously look forward to the report that Angelo Economics is preparing on economic development strategy. But ultimately, if we have a competitive environment, well, let's make sure that we have competitors in the field.
Thank you.
Councilman Duncan.
Thank you. Mr. Vasquez, I asked this question to Ms. Gilmore. Who do you believe, as city manager, your clients are, and who do you work for? Who do you serve?
I obviously serve all 13 of you, and by extension, the 85,000 people or so that each one of you represent. Those are my, you are my employer. You are the ones that, and I'm going to pause there for one moment and say this, because this is really important to me. This is not a typical employer-employee relationship. I said from the outset, this is a partnership. I do not expect to be treated like a child. I expect to be treated with respect. I will treat all of you with respect. I will demand that the department directors treat you with respect. So it's a partnership, but ultimately I do work with all 13 of you to deliver the services that you all need.
Do you believe our residents are the consumers of our services?
They are. I think we have, when it comes to customer satisfaction and customer service, I think one of the things that our organization needs to understand that some of us are very outward facing. And at the end of the day, when a resident has an interaction with us, they need to walk away feeling respected, listened to, and making sure that their needs have been met.
Thank you.
Those of us that are not, however, outward facing, also have a responsibility to serve the people that are serving everybody else. So our IT folks, HR folks, everybody that provides an internal service also needs to have an expectation of customer service.
I agree. Do you believe the government, and thereby you as city manager, have a responsibility to protect those consumers? Consumer protection?
Consumer protection?
Our residents as our consumers?
I think we do that in a lot of different ways, yes. I think in my world, in the world of infrastructure, home building, and those kinds of things, we for sure look after the investment that people make in their homes and taking, and improving their homes. We are the ones that at the end of the day make sure that standards are met. I mentioned $1.3 billion. Some of those $1.3 billion is somebody doing a home addition, to the home. It's a home improvement, replacing a furnace, looking after, the basic safety that goes along with that kind of work. So yeah, we are definitely looking after the best interest of our residents.
You talked earlier about expecting more from our developer partners. What are the expectations that you would like to set to get more out of our developer partners? And specifically in regards to affordable housing and housing in general, how would you crack that nut regarding establishing more benefit regarding affordable housing?
Councilman, I would say, at this time, we need to identify developers that are in that realm that want to do affordable housing development. Not everybody does affordable housing development. Some people focus exclusively on, luxury housing, senior housing, those kinds of things. We need to identify players that want to do affordable housing and demand more of them, and provide them with the resources that they need to be successful. For those developers that are not, in that arena, we too need to work with them. Our problem is one of supply. It is not a problem of demand. We cannot build homes fast enough in this community. And I will tell you, I know I tend to talk a lot, but I'll tell you this. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to go to Harvard University, and we reviewed a huge amount of data about where we are with home building and pricing in Kansas City relative to other communities. There is this metric that's called elasticity that it basically measures, how does the market react to supply or demand changes. Housing prices in Kansas City have skyrocketed. They're trending upward. Typical elasticity would tell you that supply would also go upwards, but our supply has been flat. We have a problem with delivery of home units. It doesn't matter what type of home unit, what housing unit it is. We have a problem with just getting things to market, and so we need to fix that.
Councilwoman Pu.
All right. So I will ask the same questions I asked before. First of all, thank you, Mario, Mr. Vasquez, for being here. So would you say in the role as city manager that you see this position as recommending and implementing policy, and what percentage of each would you put that into each category?
Well, I would think, the role of city manager is the chief administrator. We help you formulate policy, but I would say 80% of our task is to implement and deliver. It is not our function to formulate policy. We work with you and develop policy, make things that we can provide guide rails that we can carry forward. But ultimately, we deliver. That's our number one task.
It's kind of been addressed to a great extent here, so I will just say briefly, what will your approach be to economic development to the extent that you haven't spoken about it? And, I'll just leave it at that.
Well, when it comes to economic development, I think we need to understand that, the city's needs are diverse. You can actually break down our city into 4 different quadrants, and each one of them is important. We have the growing parts of our city. We have the Northland, the suburban areas. They are the engine of growth for our city. 80% of consumers out there want a suburban lifestyle. Our surrounding community delivers that to them. We need to capture that market share. So the growing parts of our city are important. We have the core of our city that has been disinvested, that needs redevelopment. We need to deploy resources to address that redevelopment. We have parts of our city that are stable, that just need maybe teetering. we need to pay attention to those parts of our city as well. And lastly, we have parts of our city that are thriving, that are stable. We need to make sure those remain that way. That just might mean making sure that basic services are delivered. So I guess what I'm telling you is these things are not competitive with one another. Understanding what kind of setting we're dealing with is important in making sure that that particular part of the city receives the resources that it needs in order to thrive. Not competitive, they are complementary.
I don't think I have any.
Mr. Vasquez, thank you for the time, and thank you for sharing some of your story that I don't think I knew and some of us didn't before, and for your 28 years at the city. My questions will be similar to previous ones, but perhaps a little different. How will you handle review of senior staff? I think it's fair to say that in recent years, separations from the city have often led either to litigation, settlements, other such items. How do you plan to handle that review process and ensuring that the institution handles it respectfully for senior staff members, but also the city more broadly?
I think, that is an issue of middle management. Middle management has probably not been adequately trained on how to handle conflictive, situations. Some of that is part of the fact that our Human Resources Academy sort of took a hiatus for a while. We are now putting back in place, the HR department is putting back in place the Pathways program. I'm not sure if they presented that to you or not, but it is a way that is actually going to identify specific training for every employee in the organization to help them do their jobs better, help them grow, help them prepare, to be leaders down the road. So those aspects of training are important. Communicating, I think, to middle management as well, the culture that we're trying to drive. We're trying to drive a culture of respect, of inclusivity, of achievement. And maybe sometimes people forget what we're here for. So we need to set a goal, we need to set a standard, we need to drive, what is the culture that we want to see in the city.
You answered somewhat before, how do you balance different groups and their views? I think that was a response to Councilman Willett. My question might then, I might amend it to be, how do you handle relationships with regional organizations? For example, Kansas City is working with KC 2026, KCATA, the Mid-America Regional Council. It's fair to say sometimes things are working well, other times there's frustration for us in terms of obtaining certain policy outcomes, bus service delivery from KC 2026, perhaps deployment in Kansas City proper of certain activities. How do you plan to address regional relationships where we don't necessarily have final authoritative power?
Well, I'll start by saying that regional cooperation is essential, I think, for the city. We do that in many ways, and it provides, I think, some predictability to the region because they know that we are going to be operating under the same rules that everybody's operating. And for example, I'm going to cite this with the building code, for example. We work with other jurisdictions to align our building codes so they are adopted in the same sequence every 6 years. And if we go out of step, then we create turmoil in the ecosystem because now we have a different set of rules that people are not used to following. So that regionalism is important to be able to be successful. The other thing I would say is we have had a lot of loss of institutional memory. We used to have very capable individuals of managing relationships with our partner organizations. That staff has, moved on, retired, found other opportunities. So we need to then now begin to grow new talent that can interface appropriately and adequately with the partners that we work with. So finding the right talent and letting them know that when they go to meetings with our organizations, they're representing us, they're representing our interests, and they need to be there and present to make sure that they're serving as well.
How do you plan to handle the relationship with the Board of Police Commissioners, particularly in light of several large settlements, both that have already occurred and ones coming our way, that will have a material impact on their budget as distinct from what was passed by council and their ability to deliver services?
Board of Police Commissioners,
Or the Chief of Police, candidly.
well, I think we need to demand some accountability on how the resources that we provide to them are spent. It is obviously a tough relationship between us and the police department, given the mandates that exist with respect to how much funding they receive from the city. But nonetheless, I think we do have a responsibility to make sure that we are at least getting the kind of service that is beneficial to us, that helps us, and not necessarily the kind of service that they think they need to provide, irrespective of what our community might demand.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. If there are additional questions for you, they would come to you in writing. We'll let you know. But for now, thank you for the time. And I guess we'll just say get back to work. But I appreciate your time.
All right.
Thank you, sir. We'll take a lunch break until 12:30. I'm told that there is lunch in the back for council, and we'll re-adjourn then.
At least they can run off after. Yeah. Somebody must have been watching.
Oh, man.